After losing what I called their worst game of the season, their worst loss of the season, in the first game of this series, the Giants follow it up with what may arguably have been their two best wins of the season in what was for sure one of the craziest series of the season and one of the craziest series you will ever see.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting Locked On Giants for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. So check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you happen to be following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked on MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And coming up on today's show, yesterday we recorded the show late, and I was, basically saying how important yesterday's game was, game 2 of the series, because they were today going up against Paul Skeens, and it was going to be tough to win that game. And so what do? Well, they fall behind big in yesterday's game, and they give up a grand slam in both games. So if you had told me yesterday the Giants are going to give up a grand slam in each of the next 2 games, I'd be like, okay, they probably got swept by the Pirates. But instead, you see back-to-back just unbelievable comeback wins for the Giants. They were down 5-0 in the game, in the middle game of the series, 5-0, and they come back, including a run in the 9th to tie it after there were 2 outs and nobody on. Luis Matos with what I will call a hustle double, even though it was a single and an error. Still just a huge hustle there. And then LaMonte Wade Jr., Late Night LaMonte, tying it up, and just the unbelievable season that he is having. And then today, the Giants were behind 5-1. And so this is the first time in franchise history, and this is like basically 150 years of Giants baseball, that they have ever had 2 games in a row that were road games in which they trailed by 4 or more runs and won those games. So they have never done this before. And it's only the first time since 1998 that they have... First time since 1998 that they have won back-to-back games that they trailed by 4 or more runs. I mean, so this is not a common occurrence. And then it is the first time also in MLB history, first time in Major League Baseball history, that all 3 games of a 3-game series featured 4+ run comeback wins. So the Pirates did it to the Giants, and then the Giants did it to the Pirates twice. Never been done before in the history of the game in a 3-game series. I wonder if it's been done in a 4-game series. Probably not. I mean, but who knows? The fact that stat was reported the way it was, maybe it has happened. But wild stuff. And the Giants, I mean, in game 1, it was a wild loss, like down up 4 in the bottom of the 9th, and they couldn't hold the lead. So I don't know what to make of this, like, overall. Like, you could say, well, they should have swept because they should have won that first game. But then you could say, well, they should have lost 2 out of 3 because they should have lost the next 2 games. And when I say should, I just mean, like, probability-wise. So we did look at the probabilities for the probability for game 1. And after Luke Jackson got that first pitch out to start the 9th in game 1, Baseball Savant, which is where the kind of StatCast metrics are hosted, had the Giants win probability at 99%. And so today, let's see where the Pirates kind of peaked at. Today, Giants winning by the final of 7-6, And if we look at the win probability chart, it was 97% for the Pirates in the bottom of the seventh. 97%. So the Giants had a 3% chance of winning, according to Baseball Savant, and that was today. 3% chance of winning. And then in the middle game of the series, when the Giants were down 5-0, the win probability for the Pirates was in the ninth inning, 97%. So the Giants won 2 games in a row in which they had a 3% chance of winning. And that was after 2 outs and nobody on in the ninth, that win probability for the Pirates was 97%. And so if you look at what, 3% times 3%, that's, I don't even know how to read this. It's it's like less than 0.1% probability of seeing that in consecutive games. It's a decimal, so you got to like move the decimal. Yeah, it's less than 0.1% of in terms of the likelihood of that happening. And then you add in the 99% for the Pirates in the previous game, and that's why you've literally never seen this in the history of the game. So, kind of a crazy thing to witness. And all in all, it turns out roses for the Giants, because it was their worst loss of the season, and they responded not just by winning the games. It'd be one thing if they just had some nice games and won, but to come back the way that they did both times just completely erases the pain of game one. And so there's just so much that you can say about this in so many different angles. You can talk about the players who came through, the series that Matt Chapman had, which we are going to focus on, and the overall win-loss total that it gives the Giants, where it puts them in the standings. But kind of momentum-wise, and then also just big picture-wise, when I'm asked like a week into the season or like 3 days into the season, at what point does this become concerning, or at what point does this become meaningful? Well, and I'm always talking about around this time, and it's just kind of wild how every year around this time you get a look at someone like on an individual level, someone like Matt Chapman, right? Track record. I'm always talking about track record, and you see it come through over the course of 162. And that's what we're seeing with him right now, as he's just on this absolute tear that has suddenly got his numbers to Matt Chapman numbers. And that's the thing about baseball, is it's not consistent. Like, you don't always get a guy who he's like, if you're 20% above average, it doesn't mean every single plate appearance you take, you're going to be 20% above average. It just means you give him 650 plate appearances, and overall it's going to look 20% above average. But you can have 2 months where you're 30% below average, and then like one 2 week stretch where you're like 200% above average. And that's just baseball, and that's why you need all these games in order to kind of have things play out that way. And so, yeah, coming up in just a minute, I do want to focus on some of the individual players, performances, especially Matt Chapman. I mean, just my little bullet point on YouTube that you can see there, if you're on YouTube, is that Matt Chapman is otherworldly. I mean, right now, the way he's playing the defense and the offense, 2 enormous home runs in the wins in this. Well, he hit a home run in all 3 games, but the home runs he hit in the wins were huge, and both on pitches above the zone, on fastballs that were high velocity. So we're going to talk more about Chapman and much more in just a minute. And before we get into it, today's episode is brought to you in part by our good friends over at Game Time. I love going to games on the road. I've already done it a bunch this season. I went to San Diego, I went to Los Angeles, I went to Boston, I went to Denver, and I look forward to it every year, and I look forward to going to more this season. And Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, and that's been my experience for sure as well. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I love being able to see the panoramic view from every seat in the house, and the lowest price guarantee just means if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by our good friends over at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. I'm looking right now. We've got the Pacers at the Celtics coming up. I believe that's tonight at 8:05 Eastern, with the Celtics as major favorites with a money line of -375, point spread of -8.5 with odds of -114. So we've also got the Mavericks and Timberwolves tomorrow, but those odds aren't as lopsided. And so with any winning $5 bet, I'm putting money line Celtics there. And if that hits, you get $150 in bonus bets. So again, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. All right, as promised, we're going to get into kind of the key plays and also the key players in this unbelievable series for the Giants as they walk away somehow winning 2 out of 3 when they should have won the first game and lost the next 2. And I say should, you know what I mean. Like probability wise, you just don't, over the course of a season, you're just not going to see stuff like this very often. And you saw it 3 games in a row. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we're going to be getting to more of your mailbag questions or finally talking with Sully from Locked On MLB. It's one of the two. We do have a bunch of mailbag questions just from earlier this week. So that would be, perfectly solid if we're not able to link up with Sully, but Sully probably wants to talk now because the Giants have just played one heck of an interesting series, and then they're going to head to New York to play the Mets. A reminder that you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I do want to get into some specific players. I just think, each game could be like a 2-hour episode in this series. But overall, coming into today, the Giants offense suddenly had a 105 weighted runs created plus, meaning 5% above average coming into today. And then today, what do? They put up 7 runs. They had a double and 2 homers. They had 13 hits. They walked twice, only struck out 6 times, 13 hits. And so that number's going up. And all of a sudden, the Giants are going to be, right now they're top, going into the game, they were top 9 in Major League Baseball in weighted runs created plus, which is just an all-encompassing offensive metric. And that number is going up. So tomorrow, after today's game, we'll see where that stands and mention it perhaps tomorrow if we're doing a mailbag or even with Sully. So, I want to mention some specific players. First of all, we'll get to LaMonte Wade Jr. and what he's been able to do, but Matt Chapman and just the heater that he's been on and how he was like a week and a half ago, we were talking about him being like close to 30% below average or something. And right now, he's gone from that to, after today's game, 18% above average overall on the season. And so we will focus on how, that is why baseball is a game of big samples and not small samples, because you can look really bad for 2 months and then get this hot. I mean, ideally, like, would you prefer someone who was just consistently 18% above average? Of course. But I mean, I think, of course, I don't know. I mean, when guys get this hot, it's like they just put you on their back. And so I don't know. That's just how the game works. And we'll get more into that. But I mean, so Chapman, he had 11 straight plate appearances reaching base during the Rockies series at home prior to this one. And then I don't have the first game pulled up in terms of the box score, but in the middle game that the Giants won 9-5 in extra innings, with 1 in the 5th, 2 in the 6th, 1 in the 8th, 1 in the 9th, with the Pirates getting nothing that whole time, and then 4 in the 10th. Matt Chapman went 1 for 3 with 2 walks, and that one hit was a 2-run homer in the 6th off of Jared Jones, who's really good and was pitching great, and he's having a breakout rookie season. I do just want to give a shout out to the bullpen. Sean Jelly gave up a run in an inning and 2/3, and then Randy Rodriguez, Tyler Rogers, Ryan Walker, and Camilo Doval, goose eggs, nothing but zeros. Randy Rodriguez, 2 innings, 4 strikeouts, no hits, no walks. He's looking like he's here to stay. Tyler Rogers with a scoreless inning yesterday and closed out the game today. Ryan Walker, a scoreless inning with a strikeout. Camilo Doval gave up a walk, but also a strikeout. And then Matt Chapman just making otherworldly plays defensively in these 2 wins at the very least. I mean, the play to end the middle game of the series off of the bat of Joey Bart, who, by the way, has just had a phenomenal series against the Giants. He hit the grand slam today for them. Looks like a different guy. It is a small sample for Bart. I'm not people are tweeting at me like, oh, it was a horrible trade. The jury is still out on that. He played a lot more with the Giants than he has with the Pirates, and he was bad. And so you can't just assume, again, it's a big sample game. And so for Bart, he's got to prove it over more than 60 plate appearances, essentially, is my opinion. And that's what I would have said about Matt Chapman, right? I would say, yeah, he's been bad for whatever. 60 plate appearances is not a lot at all. For Chapman, it was more like 100 something. And then all of a sudden, so in the same way that Chapman has gotten red hot, you can go ice cold as a hitter and it can just tank your numbers. And so we'll see with Bart. But good for him. He had a good series. He did get ejected. He was so frustrated late in the game today, with the Giants winning 7-6, and Matt Chapman, no walks, but he was 2 for 5 with a 3-run homer in the 8th off of Hunter Stratton, which is such a confusing name if you're a Giants fan, because the Pirates, I want to say they also had Hunter Strickland at some point, but they had Chris Stratton, former Giant, and of course Hunter Strickland, also a former Giant. So this guy being named Hunter Stratton is so confusing to me, but it's not Chris Stratton, it's not Hunter Strickland, it's Hunter Stratton, and the Giants lit him up. He went 2/3 of an innings, gave up 5 runs, no strikeouts, 5 hits, 5 runs in 2/3 of an inning today. They got to Aroldis Chapman. Brett Wisely had a huge hit off of Aroldis Chapman with 2 outs and an 0-2 count. He just got a middle fastball with the game tied and the go-ahead run on third, and he just singled up the middle, just a rocket off his bat. That whole inning was just a masterclass in Giants offense. Like I said, they had 13 hits. In the extra inning win, they had 12 hits. A bunch of those did come in the 10th inning when they put up a 4 spot. But, yeah, I mean, what a wild series. And then just, looking at Matt Chapman, I mean, so, he made that great play against Bart. It was 110 miles an hour off the bat. Like a high backhand spear to just kind of knock it down. And then the extremely quick footwork to, get to the ball that he had knocked down after spinning. and then to pick it up and fire a strike at like 87 miles an hour to just get Joey Bart. It was just an incredible play. And then he just made a bunch of them, not quite on that level, but, snaring balls that looked like they were going to get through, just like full extension and like just having his glove in the perfect spot. Those balls get through with the vast majority of Major League third basemen who are incredibly talented. But Chapman is just playing on another level right now. That's like what I wrote here, is that Chapman is on, what did I write? Chapman is otherworldly. He's playing on an otherworldly level. I thought Dave Fleming said it right when he said on the broadcast that if you just weren't really much of, if you were like a casual fan or something, or if you didn't know much about baseball and you watched this series, you would think Matt Chapman is the best player in the world, because that's how he played in this series. I mean, defensively, offensively, the 2 homers he hit, I don't remember the maybe I'm misremembering the one. I know that, no, yesterday and today, the homers that he hit were fastballs above the zone at high velocity, and he just like got like on top of the pitch somehow. Those are the balls that for the first couple months of the season, first month and a half or so, he was swinging through that or fouling it off at best, but now he's hitting them out for homers. And so crazy. So overall now 249 average, which again, we talked about this the other day, but Major League average is 240. Major League like average. The Major League average batting average is 240. So when you say, 249, that stinks. Actually, no, it's about 10 points above league average. And 313 on base, 440 slugging. So you're seeing the power show up. He's got 8 homers on the year now. So, and, projection systems have him hitting, 15 to 20 more. And so we're talking, well on his way. You've got LaMonte Wade Jr. I tweeted this out before the game. He was on base all 6 times yesterday, and he was 2 for 5 today, and his strikeout to walk ratio is 1-to-1. He's, I think, one of 4 guys in the sport that has struck out or walked at least as much as he's struck out. His strikeout rate is 20.9%. His walk rate is 20.9%. He has 33 strikeouts, and he has 33 walks and an intentional walk to go with it. So really, we don't count those, but it's an extra walk there. But it's just incredible. He leads the league by a mile in walk rate and on-base percentage. He's like 50 points above the next player in on-base percentage. That on-base percentage being 481. So not a full-time player. One of the things I want to get to in just a second is what has he done against lefties this year? Because someone pointed out on Twitter, and I thought it was a great point. Yeah, his at-bats against left-handed pitching, including against wildest Chapman in the middle game of the series, like leading off that one of their rally innings with a walk. It was against a lefty, a tough lefty in Chapman. I think he fell behind 0-2 and worked a walk. And so, yeah, he's just incredible what LaMonte Wade Jr. has done. And I think it's safe to say Giants won the LaMonte Wade Jr. trade. Sean Anderson in return pitched 8 or so innings with the Twins. That was the Twins' return for like 6 years of control of LaMonte Wade Jr. So, yeah, the Giants won that one for sure. So coming up in just a minute, more just kind of big picture stuff. I want to get into Wade against lefties, but also just kind of make a point about this is why sample size matters in baseball, because over the course of time, we do see things kind of correct, but you don't necessarily see it in a small sample. Even a sample of many weeks, you don't necessarily see it, but we're seeing it right now with certain guys like Chapman. So we'll get into that and more in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. And for me, I love it. I love to play with the Giants. Giants game obviously over, very early morning game today, but you simply pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Baseball is in full swing, obviously, and you don't want to miss your chance to add your favorite players from around the diamond in your PrizePicks entries like I do, whether it's strikeouts, runs batted in, first inning runs. You just take your pick of more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. Right now, I'm just looking at the app right now. You can see on YouTube, we've got Kevin Gausman in Detroit, 6 strikeouts, more or less. We've got Gunnar Henderson. Well, I don't personally like to play the pitcher or hitter fantasy score, but yeah, these are like featured, like Adley Rutschman runs versus the White Sox at 0.5. I'm taking more runs than that for Adley Rutschman. Gunnar Henderson, 1.5 total bases. Oh, heck, I'll take more on that too. So we put in those 2 entries. $20 wins 55 with those, with more than half a run for Adley Rutschman and more than 1.5 total bases for Gunnar Henderson, who's been a home run hitting machine against the White Sox. And so those are my entries for today. And download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. And this is available to play in California. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, as promised, we're going to discuss, just kind of make a point, which I think is clear if you've been following the season at all closely. But if you haven't, I mean, this is why it's important to talk about that baseball is a game of large samples. It is not a game. There are plenty of other sports where it does not take this amount of time. And it's funny, we talk about 50 games, 45 games, and really, like 60, 80, it just takes time for things to even out and become become relevant, become reliable. And it was too early. And all of a sudden you see why with guys like Matt Chapman. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every dayers tomorrow, probably a mailbag edition. We do have a lot of questions left over. And if you have more, just find on my timeline the last time that I asked for mailbag questions and add them to the queue, because obviously these 3 games were wild, and we there's plenty more we could say about them. So just to finish the point though about Wade Jr. against lefties, I haven't even looked this up, but my eye has told me that at the very least his walk rate is going to be pretty solid against left-handed pitching. He's leading the majors in walk rate, so that's not like much of a bold statement, but I think I've seen that he's gotten hits and he's drawn walks against left-handed pitching. So I would imagine the numbers are going to look like the best of his career so far against left-handed pitching as I look now. And sure enough, yeah, I mean, he's 19 plate appearances, so not big enough of a sample. He's hitting, okay, so the walk rate, like I said, he's walked in 26% of his, more than a quarter of his plate appearances against lefties have ended in a walk. He's got a 526 on base percentage against lefties. But again, it's too small of a sample. This is one of those things where you have to rely on what we're seeing and not so much on the numbers. The numbers more like tell a story versus being predictive at this stage. But what's predictive, couple the numbers with what you're seeing, and maybe it is predictive, but you just don't know. In his career, he literally only has 189 plate appearances against lefties, and he's been about 40% below average, hitting 191 with a 290 on base and 248 slugging. So that's why he mostly gets platooned. But hey, if we look at 2023 and 2024, it's a tiny sample. But it's the most recent 100 plate appearances. So the career numbers are what? 100 and, what did I say? 100 and, come on. It won't let me go back, but it was 100 and something, not much more than that. So he was dreadful in whatever it was before the most recent 100 plate appearances against lefties, because the most recent 100, he's hitting 278 with a 385 on base and 367 slugging, which is a 117 weighted runs created plus. And against righties during that same span, the last 2 years, 136 weighted runs created plus. So this with a 400 on base percentage. This dude, LaMonte Wade Jr., is what a dude. I mean, and if you look at projections now, they're anywhere on the low end from about 20% above average to on the high end close to 40% above average. They are obviously kind of going to factor in that there's a lot of platooning, and so that matters and affects the numbers there. But he's already produced basically the same amount of wins above replacement as, according to FanGraphs, which has its own calculation, as he has in any season of his career, and we're 49 of his games into the season, and so projections, like I said, have him like 1.5 to 2 more wins, and so if you put up 2 more wins above replacement, that's a 4-win season for Wade, and that's huge. And this guy is under team control through the 2025 season, so only 1 more year of team control for Wade. But what a pickup he has been. I mean, what a job he has done. I guess he didn't come with he did come with 6 years of team control. I mean, this guy is just coming into his own and just doing an unbelievable job. He is due for some regression. He leads not only the league in walk rate and on base percentage by a mile, but he also leads the league in BABIP by a mile. And it doesn't mean he's been lucky. We have stats like expected numbers basically to now show he's earned the production that he's put up there. He's not getting lucky hits. It's about sustainability. But he also hasn't really hit for much power, which in the past he's hit for a lot more power than he has this year. He had 17 home runs last year. He had 18 home runs in 2021 in 109 games, and he's got 2 this season in 48 games. And so I would expect fewer kind of singles, doubles, and triples and more homers, like fewer when he puts the ball in play, more outs, but also more homers, like in the long run. But the walk rate, that's legit. I mean, he's going to be one of the guys who's going to be among the leaders in walk rate. And he's also making a ton of contact. Strikeout rate is fine, very much under control. So we haven't yet seen the kind of regression to the mean with Wade. Like, you're not going to rock a batting average on balls in play of 443, which is what he currently has. Career, it's 290, and so there's a lot that's going to come off that. But the isolated power for Wade is only 091 compared to 170 in his career. So that's what I'm saying. The average on balls in play is going to come down eventually, but the power numbers are probably going to go up eventually, and that's why projection systems aren't like, oh, this is all unsustainable. No, I mean, they see him as being an on-base machine who's going to hit for more power. And so, anyway, I could go on, but yeah, that the Giants' recent hot streak offensively is why we don't judge them too much in a small sample. And on the pitching end, we could get into that too. They have allowed a lot of runs, but it hasn't mattered these last couple games, and they had it in the bag in Game 1. So on to the Mets, and that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.